Good afternoon, everyone. This is the monthly meeting of the Dayton Stormwater Committee. This is also a remote participation Zoom meeting. It's a public meeting being video and audio recorded for cable broadcast and internet posting on www.dayton-ma.gov and YouTube. Zoom meeting number 854-8958-2904. Zoom meeting password 037162. Call-in number 929-205-6099. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Roll call attendance starting with Mr. Fires.
Mr. Fires is here.
Mr. Billing is here.
Chief McDonald.
James Akia. Tim Ryan's representing the planning board.
Lisa Caledonia Conservation.
Sorry.
Sorry, I'm not a member, but Lisa Caledonia Conservation Commission.
Mr. Chairman, and I think Mr. Ferry will be back shortly. We need to watch the clock. At 1:30, we have a public hearing, a continuation of the Clear Lake Energy solar project on William Street.
The postal aides are joining us on Zoom right now.
Okay, fine.
The postal aides, the abutters too.
So under committee business, the first item is review, discuss, act 2371 County Street. Yes. Yes.
John Mitchell representing Russell Enos and his sister Jean McLaughlin, who are the owners of the property.
Before you make a statement, Mr. Kelly, would you just give a quick update on, we had a site visit at this location, and this agenda item is to discuss a follow-up to that site visit.
Sure, so we have received some complaints about some filling that had occurred in the back of this property, which was the old railroad bed. And we asked the property owners if we could come walk the property. They let us on there, and we did a site walk. There was no discussion at the site walk, but we all looked at what we saw, and we invited them to come back and they're here with their attorney to give us an update on what they're looking to do, and obviously we're going to see what we discussed and discuss what we saw and see what we want to do to move forward. So this is how to move forward from where we're at.
Okay, thank you. And the committee did send a follow-up letter to Attorney Mitchell, advising him that we would be scheduling this as an agenda item, and that in the meantime, there was to be no activity at the site where the materials were observed. So, Attorney Mitchell, if you want to speak.
Yes, I mean, my clients have reassured me there's been no activity on the property. They understand. They were both there that day. And we were in front of the Conservation Commission, I believe, last Thursday night, and kind of left it to see what happened here before we went back to them. But what my clients are looking for is permission. They do want to fill that area with good fill. They feel that everyone else along at least that area that has been allowed one way or another to fill it, and they'd like to complete it. I think Mr. Russell explained, Ms. Enos explained the other day when we were out there and before conservation, that it was being filled, he felt, with appropriate fill until he had back surgery last year. And then someone other than the people that gave permission to come on the property had come on and filled it with some of the fill that this commission and committee and others observed that day. They understand that, you know, some things need to be removed, and they're willing to work with both the commission and the committee to remove some items. But they would like, you know, the commission to complete the fill. They do want to reclaim what they can in that back area, as everyone else in that area of the old railroad bed had, including whom we believe are the individuals who made this complaint, who completed their fill and reported the family, the owners of the property about this. So we're here to work with this committee and also the Conservation Commission, but we're also looking for the direction from both committees, and did want to be clear that we would want to complete the fill. They would like to reclaim that back area, which would add a lot to the property.
Does anyone wish to comment?
I have a question. Do we know that they own the property behind their house? Is that on the deed somewhere, or?
Yeah, it goes back.
The assessors map indicates that they own the entire.
So he does own the property back there?
Does anyone else wish to comment?
Well, I'll just say that if they want to fill, it's within their right to request that they fill that area, but they would need to file with the appropriate people. And Conservation Commission being one of them. Stormwater Committee, I think, would be involved because of the drainage area. And there was discussion, we'd have to discuss the fill that's there now and whether or not it would be adequate to stay there or some of it would need to be removed. But if that's their intention, is to try and fill that area, then they would have to file something.
Okay, in going to the Concom, have they had any kind of a plan drawn about what they plan to remove? Let's say it's the undesirable stuff, the stuff that got dumped there allegedly without permission, I'll put it that way. So do they have any kind of a plan, for example, that would state how much what it is they're going to remove, and have it disposed of properly? Whether, I would assume they would have a company do it that would come in and take out whatever is inappropriate, and then a plan showing what they plan to bring in to fill and how wide an area. In other words, so that if they're gonna go back to Concom and come back to us, we need more than just, we wanna remove the bad stuff, we wanna fill it in, and so that it's good land. So has anything been done, have they had anybody look at it who would be an appropriate person to come up with a plan?
No, not yet, but they plan to. I mean, they just waited to get through the 2 meetings. The Conservation Commission the other night indicated they were looking for environmental survey. And I've talked to my clients about that. We want to see this committee's disposition on it, and we can certainly, you know, their intention is to fill, so we'll have to follow the procedures to do that. And they understand that. As far as what's removed, I think the survey would show what's good and what's bad in there, and we present that to both the commission and the committee once we have that completed.
Say again.
Yes, hello everyone, James Aguirre, building official. So we know this was an old railroad bed going back to the turn of the century. Is it truly part of any stormwater infrastructure? Do we know if County Street discharges into this area? What made it a wetland?
Could be the topography, who knows, but it is now.
So it's a wetland, but we don't know if it's part of stormwater infrastructure?
There's definitely a stream that's connected, built the storm drain on Hart Street. Yeah, and it goes down to the Taunton River.
So it runs through this area?
Yeah,
Through the area, into a catch basin down to the river.
So obviously, as part of the permitting process, we want to make sure that we don't create a dam by filling this in. I know that conservation will be involved, but that would be my only concern, because since the railroad has been abandoned for some time, there may be stormwater infrastructure that's there that we're aware of or that we're not aware of, but we don't want to create a problem.
Well, there's mention of town infrastructure. The other question would be, does DOT have something?
Right.
Mr. Ferry is not here at the present time. But, so my question to anybody on the committee, if I own this property and all of this stuff is on that, or let's assume I bought the property and all of a sudden, I take a good look and say, oh, listen, I wanna fill it in, but I got all this stuff. Who would I hire to come in and say, in order to fill this, to make this usable land, to expand your backyard? Now, this again is coming up with a plan. All right, the following has to be removed. They would look at it and tell me which items can't be part of fill. And then they would tell me if they're going to bring in gravel and then loom and all that. And obviously, Concom's looking for an environmental study. Is there one person that can do this? Is it some kind of engineering? I don't know.
Oh, that's Pete.
Yeah, there is.
Yeah, it's,
No, you wouldn't know,
No.
it's civil engineer,
no,
For
civil
solid
engineer,
waste?
Excuse me?
has it been deemed solid waste?
it hasn't
Right,
reached that level.
right.
Go ahead.
And civil engineer may have to bring in an LSD.
Right, so yeah, it will be a civil engineer that will be engaged by the property owner. In doing their diligence, they would look to see what materials are there, have to be removed, whether or not there's any stormwater infrastructure that will be impacted, whether or not there's any easements to the property for stormwater that was put in by Mass Highway or the town. And then they would present a plan to both commission and this body, for permit approval. So that would all be through the discovery phase by a civil engineer. I think the property owner had his hand up, do you have your hand up?
No, it's just one,
Okay.
Okay, so, Attorney Mitchell, your comments on what you just heard, are they amenable to getting a civil engineer who could?
I will certainly talk to
Do
them
the
about
things-
it, I mean, they do wanna fill it, they wanna do it. I mean, again, I think their biggest grievance is they've owned it for 70 years as a family, and everyone else, I guess, was quicker than them to fill it in. And, now they're kind of holding back when everyone else has already done that in that immediate area. And they do have questions on, I mean, I understand there's flora in that area and what we consider stagnant water, but the riverbed was dry. I know both my clients walked it when they were younger, and we still question, although there are maps that show it, is I guess there'll be standing water in that area, so. But we do have questions on that we'll look into and certainly speak with someone about.
My other thought is when you, in your remarks, you talked about how when one of the property owners was ill, that what appears to sound like illegal dumping was done, or somebody done stuff without permission.
It was just, for years they've been filled there, that we certainly, Russell Enos thought was acceptable, and it seems to have been, but he had back surgery a little more than a year ago and didn't get up to the property as much. And from what he understands is someone else kind of thought they could dump there and dump, and that's a lot of what we saw above. I mean, there were clearly some timber in there and some other things that aren't appropriate, and they recognize that.
When you mentioned that, my other thought was, obviously you're the attorney, but my thought was, if they knew who did the illegal dumping, I would think they would have legal recourse,
Yeah, they
which
should.
doesn't involve us.
Yeah,
But I thought of that also. So, what I'm thinking of is based on what we've heard today, if you could talk to your clients and talk about the possibility of a civil engineer. What I'm hoping is that, a document can be created that's gonna work for stormwater and conservation, that both committees can look at and come to an agreement on what has to be removed based on the professional recommendation of the, I'll say, civil engineer, if that's the route they go, with a plan and a possible timetable. I know that when you have to do those kinds of cleanup, I know that we have in this area companies that you can call in with the appropriate equipment, trailers, whatever, to get it out of there and put it into a recycling type thing. But I think that we have in front of us a potential solution. Again, you've got to talk to your clients, but so how do you feel about that? And we can continue this until you notify us that
Yeah, no, only part of that, and we gotta get back to conservation, so
Right.
we kind of left it to see what happened here today.
Okay,
And I'll talk to them and get some ideas from different companies and quotes and get back to you.
all right, and as I said, if there can be a plan developed from, this is what needs to be done, these are the plans, we can hire the ABC XYZ company, and then once all that stuff is disposed of that has been identified as needing to be removed, then Phil will be brought in and, you know, whether it's grass or whatever they're going to plant back there, and again, the plan would address issues that relate to drainage and stormwater runoff and all those kinds of things. Excuse me? And wetlands, yeah, so it would be all inclusive so that both conservation and stormwater can look at it and come to an agreement and hopefully resolve it so that the property owners will know what has to be done and what they can do to, after the cleanup, enhance their property.
Oh, that's fine, Madam Chair. We'll be back to you.
Okay,
And we'll be back to conservation.
okay, did you wish to speak? Oh, you want to talk to me?
We have not yet scheduled.
You can ask them.
They won't get it right from us.
No, but we wanna work on it while they're talking, work on our next meeting date. We gotta figure it out anyway, right?
Oh, one of the things we need to do as a committee, not only set a meeting date, is we should announce, for example, Stormwater Committee meets once a month on the blank, third Thursday, second Tuesday, whatever. We need to state that, which means if we come, we need to make that public information under the open meeting law. Obviously, if in checking, we are not gonna have a quorum, we can reschedule, but we should have something on record that our regular meeting is, and we can do that, excuse me, Mr. Attorney Mitchell, yes.
No,
Are you all set?
yeah, I'll talk to my clients.
Okay. Okay, getting back to this issue, could I get a motion to, continue the discussion on, 2371 County Street? Once we hear from Attorney Mitchell, we'll be back on the agenda when we hear that he's ready.
So we're tabling it, that might not continue.
Yeah.
Because it's not being continued to a date certain.
Yeah, we have certain dates, we either state that it would be best practice to make a motion.
Just to table?
Yes,
Okay, all right. Is there a motion to
I'll
table?
make it a formal motion to table.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, Mr. Pius?
Aye.
Mr. Billy?
Aye.
Mr. Aguirre?
Aye.
Mr. Rhines?
Aye.
Mr. Berry?
Aye.
Mr. Burnett?
Aye.
And Nancy Bill, aye, it's unanimous. Okay, so we'll wait to hear from you, Attorney
Thank you,
Mitchell.
we'll be back to you.
Okay,
Thank you for your time, thank you.
okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we get a few more minutes before the scheduled hearing at 1:30. Agenda item 5B. Mr. Ferry, could you give us an update on the effects of the storm that blew through town? It started out as tropical to a hurricane and back to tropical, whatever, Elsa.
Right, so you're referring to July 9th? So from our web service, it's very short and sweet, because not much happened in that town, it was already fizzling out. The specific weather conditions for the city of Dayton recorded on Friday, July 9th. Reports are based on the New England network of observers, including Berkeley, Somerset, and Swansea. Friday, July 9th, for heavy rains, measuring 2.5 inches. High temperature 78. Low temperature was 65. Wind speed was 10 miles an hour. Wind gust was 35. Flooding and ground was wet.
Mr. Ferry, guess I need a little more detail. Do we have any trees down?
No, there was no trees down. Like I said, the wind was very minimal. The rain amount was not astronomical. What we experienced for flooding was, we just came out of a rain event, less than 72 hours prior to that rain event coming in. So any type of filtration measures set in place and whatnot would most likely compromise.
There was a large, it appeared to be one tree, an evergreen, a fir, a pine or something on Lincoln Avenue that was right along the side of the road, and it was green, it wasn't dead. But I'm thinking, we also had some bad thunderstorms, because I know a large one came down my yard. And it was right on the side of the road, and I mean, right on the side of the road. I don't know if you've seen it or not, but I don't think it was Elsa that brought it down.
That was prior to that, so
Okay,
we just had very small branches, especially at wind speed when the trees come down.
okay, and was there any power outage or anything that you know of?
Not that day, no.
Okay, all right. Does anybody have any questions from Mr. Ferry? Thank you, Mr. Ferry. While we're still just about ready to get a few minutes before the hearing, let's go back to setting a date. What is a reasonable date that we can post that the Stormwater Committee meets the blank of each month? Which means like, whether it's the third Thursday or the third Wednesday or anything.
Well, I'm gonna just throw out there that Mondays, I think, are bad for everybody. And Thursdays, it gets real hard for us at the end of the day, at the end of our week, if these meetings go till 4:30 to try and get back to the office. So I'd rather be a Tuesday, Wednesday myself.
Yeah, me too.
Terry, you work all the time, so it doesn't.
I'm sorry, what was your date?
I said either Tuesday or Wednesday would be good for me.
I'm liking Tuesday better.
How's the third one of the month? Again, if in the course of putting an agenda together, if Mrs. Brassey contacts everyone and we find out we're not gonna have a quorum, obviously we'll reschedule it to have a quorum. But just for the sake of having something out there in public, so Mrs. Brassey, if you'd see added to the website that, and I will ask for a vote on this, third Tuesday of the month.
Tuesday, is that what it said?
Tuesday, third Tuesday of the month, 1 p.m., Old Town Hall. That would be if you will, a regular meeting schedule. So is there a motion for that, please? To set that?
I'll make that a full motion that the Stormwater Committee meet on the third Tuesday of the month at 1 p.m.
Sorry, the third Tuesday of every month, we have our coalition meeting for Boards of Health in Norton at 1 o'clock.
Okay, so we're at Wednesday.
Sorry,
Wednesday would actually work better for me instead of Tuesday.
Okay, so how's Wednesday? Does anybody have a problem with Wednesday? Okay,
Is your billing any problem with Wednesday?
no,
Mr. Ryan,
Just
you
the
want
first
to amend that?
Wednesday's fine with me.
Third Wednesday, 1 o'clock.
I will
Okay,
make a full motion that the Stormwater Committee meet on the third Wednesday of the month, which our next meeting would be on August 18th.
is there a second?
second,
Discussion? Hearing none, call the vote. Mr. Pius?
Aye.
Mr. Pilling?
aye.
Mr. Aguirre?
Aye.
Mr. Ryan?
Aye.
Mr. Ferry?
Aye.
Mr. Burnett?
Aye.
Nancy Goulart, aye. Vote is unanimous. Okay, I still see we got a couple of minutes, so let's see if we can take another one. Report on firecracker public education. So, I had a table at the, event. I gave away practically everything I had. I will be talking to you later on about the need to acquire some more, giveaways and is to be used for our public education program. We did order clips like we put on chip bags, and we also have 2022 calendars that are very nice. And the pictures are national parks, and it says on it, and as a matter of fact, before we adjourn, Mrs. Brassey can grab a few of those and give them out to you. But it has national parks, it says at the bottom, like we town like Stormwater Committee, be the solution to stormwater pollution. And then the clips, the comment on the clips was given to us by Mr. Ferry, so we'll give you some clips too. My other thing is that I'm going to need some more bags and grippers because people were asking for them. I gave away all the grippers I had, I've got a few bags left, but even though we've done that before, they're very popular because the ones I gave out when we started this years ago are worn out. And so the public informed me, gee, I'd like to have a gripper, or no more bags. As a matter of fact, Mr. Pilling came over to this building, he got me another case of bags, and I gave away most of them. So anyhow, firecracker went very well. It was an excellent turnout for the first time, and I have no idea how many people came by the table. Children too, so I'm talking about that as far as getting some kind of handout for children, because some wanted shopping bags. Obviously, I didn't have them to give to them, and all I had for them was puzzles to get on the UVA website. So anyhow, excellent program, well attended, and people were very happy with what we were able to do. So thank you everybody that helped me with whatever. And it's just about 1:30, so I am going to open the public hearing for Clearway Energy, 1420 and 1522 William Street Solar Project.
Madam Chair, I'll be recusing myself, since I have a relative that wants the property.
Okay,
And just, Mike Mullen has joined us, and as well as the Bruce Delays, but there's no one else on.
okay, Mike, can you hear us? We can't hear you.
Yes, I can hear you, everybody. Sorry, I was muted.
Okay,
We can hear
Mr.
you now, Michael.
Mr. and/or Mrs. Beausoleil, can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay, all right, so would the representatives from the project come to the podium, please?
Just so you know, the microphone is that disc on the center table here, right in front of Nancy.
Go ahead.
So you're gonna have to speak up so that I can pick you up.
David's the microphone, I will. Dave Cowan with Clearway Energy. Good afternoon, everybody. Nice to be here in person. For a change, we're here representing the William Street Solar Project. It's about a 4.5 megawatt utility scale solar project located on 2 parcels on William Street. It was originally developed by Forefront Energy and permitted by the town in 2018. Subsequently, it was determined we should also acquire the new stormwater permit. So we've been in that process for the last couple of months. Since the May meeting, I think the last month and a half or so, there's been a lot of activity back and forth with Mr. Pilling, some very helpful comments on the plans. And I think we believe we've reached a point now where we've addressed all the comments that I think we have. Most of them were clarifications and corrections and that sort of thing, but there were a few substantive items that we also addressed. If you like, we can go through those since the May meeting.
Yes, that would be fine. I would ask, I'm not sure what order this is going to be in, but the police chief is here. And I'm not sure how long he's going to be able to be with us, because of his schedule. If we could first discuss concerns that were raised relative to the access to through the Arujo farm stand property that deal with safety issues. So if you could start with that, so that if the chief has comments, he can make his comments, and then if he has to leave, he can leave.
Okay. Well, unfortunately, I don't have myself a full update on that.
Okay, does anybody here from the project wish to speak about the issues we discussed relative to heavy traffic through the parking lot and the control of traffic on William Street and the need for police details? Does anybody here from the project know anything about that that could speak on it?
Christopher Ryan with Meridian Associates. Just based off of past conversations, I know that one of the concerns was at the entrance. So in talking with Mr. Ferry, we moved the construction entrance back so that vehicles can still come in and go either left or right to access the gravel parking areas. The other thing, and I don't want to speak for anybody at Clearway, but I think that as far as police details, things of that nature, they understand, and that's something that they're gonna make sure that they work out with the police department prior to anything happening. So to make sure that whatever the police department requires, that they're complying with it. That's not part of my involvement in the project, but that's just what I recall as far as the public safety details and things that.
Okay, just a minute, Chief. Is there anybody online from Clearway that wishes to address this? That's not, Chief?
Yes, good afternoon, everybody, Chief McDonald, Police Department. This Friday, I had a meeting with one of their representatives over there that I'm gonna be sitting down with them, Friday afternoon at 1 o'clock to discuss details, what we're gonna be looking for, what they need to have. So after that meeting, I can come back and let you know exactly what, the meeting was about, how the details are gonna work. We tried to get together earlier, but for the month, but he was on vacation at the time, and I had some other things we had to do, so this Friday I will be meeting with him, so I can come back after that meeting and let the committee know that this is what we're gonna do.
Okay, thank you, Chief. Okay, all right, if you should continue now.
Sure, as I said, we did have some material changes since the last meeting. We had, I'm going to help this back up and go through those. Just briefly, I think it comes down to maybe 4 items, just to kind of refresh everyone's memory. There was some discussion about crowning the road to ensure that is the access driveway that runs between the 2 wetlands. Just to ensure that the hydrology remains consistent with existing. There's talk about putting in a heavier stone at a potential overflow point on the driveway. Critter crossings, as they come to be known as well, maybe I'll take that one and just say we did add those in the silk fence line and the full line, added those, not so much a stormwater issue, but it came to stormwater comments, so we're happy to accommodate that. And then some Jersey barriers and lots of, I think those are the items that were additions or changes versus clarifications or corrections to potential type of overlay. Anyway, that's the setup for that.
So I had a phone conversation with Mr. Ferry. We talked about the issues such as the road crown in the area between the 2 wetlands and the size of stone to be used on the entrance pad as the vehicles leave the site. Also for the low point where we talked about last time that in a 100-year storm, there is an amount of water that does end up crossing the driveway after the water initially goes to the south. So after talking with Mr. Ferry, initially he was a little skeptical of having the crown there, but it's after talking through it and explaining why we had it there, we decided to stay with that. On the initial construction pad coming into the site, he had asked for a 4-inch minus stone, so expect that in the detail sheet. I believe it's an ash stone number 1 stone size. Also on the low point, because there is a natural low point on the existing road that we're going to be maintaining. So we have it on the plans, it's I think it's 20 feet to either side of that. Is instead of using the 1.5-inch stone that's used on the rest of the gravel driveway, in that area it's going to be a 3-inch minus stone, so heavier stone, so that way it's less likely to be displaced from the road or washed out or anything like that in the larger storms. Todd had brought up the question about where the washout pit for the construction entrance is located, and he's concerned about possibly needing barriers, so we expect to place Jersey barriers on the sides.
That's sheet 701 for those of you trying to find it.
So we expect Jersey barriers to go on those 2 sides that are facing the parking lot, so that way the customer vehicle doesn't inadvertently back up and drive into the washout pit. We had also called out, there's a few labels we added to call out the paved entrance apron on the erosion control sheet. Initially, the erosion control sheet, we just usually call out the erosion control measures, but since he specifically asked for it, we did put a call out there for the entrance. And then he also mentioned, since we did go out and do additional survey work, we had to sort of meld two surfaces, two topographic surfaces together. He did notice a couple of contours on the edge of our surface with the existing contours from the previous survey. So we went back in and looked at all our spot shots and connected those existing contours. It didn't affect anything we were doing as far as the proposed cross sections because our surface extended beyond the limits of where we were doing those, but just to make sure that everything's coherent and easier to read, so we join those contours up.
So in looking at sheet 7.01, you're going to pave out to William Street, that little section that I see there. Kind of looks like,
The entry apron.
it's like the Devil's Tower, to tell you the truth. Then there's a space. What is that space? Is that paved or gravel?
No, that's gravel, and then you'll see sort of with stone hatches, that's the sort of construction pad entrance where it has the larger stones, so that.
That's the riprap?
Yeah, so that way when trucks are leaving, it'll help shake the sediment off the tires. In talking with Mr. Ferry, we didn't want to put that too far into the site because we didn't want them to have the dirt come off the tires and then just pick up new dirt and then go into the street. We also added that we also specified silt sacks for the existing catch basin.
So if I'm driving my vehicle as a customer for Arujo's, I would drive into the paved entrance, and that's some gravel there, well, parking lot's gravel to the left anyhow. And then I drive forward. Am I gonna drive over that riprap to get to the farm stand?
I'm not familiar with the way where is the farm stand set up? Is it set up
Well, I'm looking
along
at
the
this
street
side.
line or is it in the driveway into the site?
There's a parking lot in front of, have you been to the site?
Yeah, there's a
All right,
parking
you
area on
drive
either
in.
side.
All right, you
Yeah.
drive in, and the main building, the store, and the main greenhouse are all on the left. In front of them is the parking area, and there's a fence that runs along William Street. On the other side, there's the fence, but you go just a little bit further to turn into the parking lot that's on the right, which is on the north side of the entrance to it. So, I'm the customer, I'm on William Street, I turn right over the paved entrance, okay? And it's gravel there, which is gravel now. How am I going to access? It looks like I can take a sharp left and get into the parking lot in front of the store, greenhouses, whatever.
Yes.
But if it's full, and I want to use the parking lot on the north side, am I gonna drive over riprap to get to it?
I believe so. I think it's far enough, unless the entry to that parking lot is beyond the front face of the building. Is that? This is wrong.
No, it's
Okay.
this side.
Yeah, so the construction pad is laid out as it's laid out right now, is to be right, sort of along the building line, the front face of the building.
Okay, it would be helpful if, or is there somewhere else in this design that's gonna show me where the building is? Because looking at this particular sheet, I don't think, I see rectangles and squares, but I don't see the building, and that was one of the questions we had about safety as far as the entrance was. So is that anywhere here? Does anybody know? Is it on the plans?
The building as shown, that was from the original survey done several years ago. I can certainly make, call it out a little bit better if it's not sufficient for what you're
Yeah.
talking about.
So that pad's approximately 75 feet back from the entrance to the road, basically.
Where's the building?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like 65, so.
Okay.
So it should be more than
Yeah.
If that's a Jersey barrier, how am I gonna get into this?
So what she's saying might be easier if you just.
Is there anybody wants to come look at this, chief, you wanna take a look at this?
So this is the
South
southern
Avenue.
Yeah, so you walk out the front door and you turn and go down the walkway and you now got Jersey barriers where you.
So this is me driving in.
It's not use the building. So you walk out the front door and then you're gonna walk right into the Jersey barrier.
So I drive the car in,
So you might need to slide this.
So- I want you to either go left or right, okay?
Yeah.
So the way that this is drawn, that's why I said, I thought I had to drive over this, but if I don't drive over that, I'm blocked.
Well, you've got, as the gentleman just mentioned, we've got about 75 feet from here to here. So it should be more than enough room for a vehicle to come in and navigate its way up. Right. But as Todd pointed out,
That's right.
again, not knowing about that walkway, you can certainly push this back so that this Jersey barrier is parallel.
Behind the front face,
Yeah, just behind the front.
Yeah,
face.
because if you run this walkway, you come out of the building and you immediately, turn to the, I'm walking out, I'm gonna make a left turn, headed towards the driveway, okay? I can actually, right now, walk right across this driveway, because if I'm parked over here, obviously, that's where I'm gonna go, all
So
right?
that's effectively a pedestrian walkway, it's not straight, but that's effectively where they're always walking across. Right
Okay. So we could just push this and this back so that this is about 5 feet behind the line.
Tom, you okay with that?
It's why we have to carry anyways if you want.
Because he was concerned that this wash pit, that people could inadvertently either back up
It's 2
into
feet,
it
it's
or
2
walk
feet
up.
deep.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's 2 feet deep and it's right up against the pedestrian walkway.
Or like a kid could fall into it or something, so he wanted somebody to maybe call it out to try to prevent vehicles possibly finding its way.
It's deep, so. It's 10 by 10.
Chief, excuse me, could you take a look at this, please? Because if you're gonna be reading, so my question was, I drive in here, and, all right, so because there's a barrier, a Jersey barrier here, so they're talking about relocating this because this is the walkway, you know, you come out, you turn left, and you can walk right across the driveway to the other parking lot. Right, so they're just talking now about this, so you need to know this because you're gonna be talking to someone. So what is your proposed solution here?
So Todd suggested that since this is the front building face here, that we just, this is sort of a washout pit with Jersey barrier. And this is the construction that we just take both of these, push them back so that this Jersey barrier is not like 5 feet behind it.
Yeah, so it's back this way.
Correct, so it won't be blocking anybody from walking.
Right, it's not too big. It's not close to the William Street, it's back. Yeah, that's probably better being back there.
You see, it's right there, I think you're gonna need to use that. You see like protective copier, canisters, the small ones in the front of the so probably smaller, it's pretty easy. Yeah, they shape the barrier, shape. Wire, multiple ones, say the room that's still be protected.
Well, if we push this back, it's gonna be almost up against the building. So we really need protection on the front. How about like one of those sand films back?
Yeah, it's slightly narrow, yeah, the last one.
Yeah. That'll be okay.
Not look like you were here, I should take some of that.
Right through it.
Yeah, it'll be right
Not
there.
beyond 20 seconds.
Okay, so I'm the customer, I drive in here, and I'm gonna either go here or here to park. So I go into the business, do my business, I come out the front door, I'm gonna turn, let me park over here, okay? I come out the front door, the walkway that's there now is gonna remain there, I'm gonna turn left, I'm gonna walk across the driveway to get to my car, and then I'll exit out this way. Okay, I think that, well, that's another thing. That business has loads of regular customers. They're used to doing certain things. And so another thing is, if you don't change the path, they're gonna come up and do what they always did, which is really what you want, because you don't want them roaming around figuring out how do I get out of here. All right, so now I understand that, okay.
Yeah, just pretty much, so that the front face of this is about 4 or 5 feet behind the building. So that way people can just keep walking. Well, it will slightly, but it'd be back like to keep the start with here or whatever.
But this is good, because people shouldn't be going this way anyhow, they should come out and go
I think it's 50 feet, it's like 50 feet.
Okay, so if you want to continue now?
Okay.
You can stay there if you want the microphone, like say that, just right there, so.
I think that was pretty much it for the latest comments and changes that we made. The last few comments were very minor. But obviously now that I know we'll have to relocate this back, I'll have to replace the detail for the Jersey barrier with the yellow plastic sand filled Jersey barrier that Mr. Ferry agreed to.
Okay,
So that way it's more visible.
okay. Does anyone else here wish to comment what you've heard so far?
So, Tom, are we okay with like a 40-foot gap between the pavement and that crushed stone exit pad? So you're gonna drive pavement, then gravel, and then onto the crushed stone, you're okay with that?
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
Just making sure.
and those are helping to get into that pond that was barricaded.
Yep, just one, because it's a couple different things, a lot of things happening in that small area, so.
If you went just stone to asphalt, it may not contain the water that you want to contain. You need the gravel to push it over the side.
Okay, nope, I just wanted to make sure, I didn't know if we want the pavement to go in any further or whatever, so.
No, that's what that one, water gets on top of pavement, it's gonna be on my road. The less pavement in that area, the better.
Okay.
Is the gravel area gonna be wide enough so that now I'm the truck driver and I drive over the rocks to clean the tires and get all the junk off them? Am I gonna pick up gravel from that spot and drag that out into the road?
And conditions, it should be elevated enough.
Yeah, and the gravel for the construction, which is, the stone's about that big, so I don't think it can be bigger than that, like dragging on the road. I'll just talk about the area of gravel between the stone.
Yes, and the pavement.
I gotta believe very
It
well.
could, yeah, it could be a piece of.
You get silk trailing. You will get silk
Yeah.
trailing, but that's fine. Yeah. But that, if you boom the storm drains, that'll take care of that.
But if it becomes a problem, obviously we just ask them to put more down while they're under construction.
I would monitor it, just be ready to put a piece on top of it.
We're not gonna ask you to reconstruct, but we just have to be mindful of this.
No, and as long as I've raised the issue and everyone has had a chance to talk about it, it just means that we get heavy rains or other things, it's just gotta be monitored, just like other ongoing sites that we have, that have been approved. So what else do we have relative to any issues that came up before? Excuse me, are you all set at this point?
Unless anybody had any other questions.
Okay, so, Mr. Cowan, go ahead.
I think, yeah, thank you. I think we've covered, Chris went through the road crown. I believe he talked about the section in the access driveway where it might overtop during the storm. We put a larger stone size in there as well, so that we don't have the risk of washout there. So it's about a 40-foot section at the lowest point in the access driveway down near between the roof pool and the wetland on the other side of the driveway. And pretty process. So those are, I believe those are the changes. In addition to what Chris talked about. That's, the other stuff, as I said, has been corrections, labeling, additions to labels, clarifying labels, there's a contour labeling, typo correction to be made as well. But those were, those weren't material changes to the project.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Lisa.
Sorry, the soil, topsoil stockpile area, is that a new area?
No, that's always been on the plan.
It's always been there?
Yeah.
Okay, just trying to figure out how far away from the resources you are to get out. The topsoil stockpile,
Yeah.
because the sheet cuts it off.
Yeah, if you look on sheet 7.00, so the overall plan, we are not within any conservation buffer zones. I think the closest we come is about 200, a little more than 200 feet away from the EBW.
Okay. like you're gonna have to go into the tree line a bit too, so.
Yeah, like I said, those come were this way all the way from the permit plans, we didn't touch that.
How far is that, the northern boundary on that, storage area to that property line?
I don't know where you're going.
Do you have?
I'm looking at 7.00. So the farthest of that topsoil storage area where that red dotted line is, what's the closest distance to the property line? The north property line.
About 175 feet.
How much was that?
It's like maybe 175 feet.
You're talking about to the north of the stockpile or the south?
If you're looking at C 7.00.
Yeah.
And I've got it landscaped this way.
Yeah.
So if you look at that very top corner on the north side, that looks like the closest distance to the property line. So my question is, what's the distance from the broken dotted red line to the property line?
That, the heavy line that's in a rectangle there, that's not a property line.
Right.
That's just, this is an index plan.
It's a project line?
It's just an
Okay.
index plan to show you what appears in each sheet.
Stockpile is actually closest to the south property line, not the north property line, not
To the north, maybe 960 feet.
the south, it looks like, you guys have the scale?
Yeah, it's about the closest point for the, sort of the oval, is about 55 feet. It's about 55 feet north of that property line.
Property or project?
Property.
Do you have sheet C7 open here?
Yeah, the town drain.
Yeah, sheet 7.01 gives you the best.
Oh, this is 701. Okay. So what my
625.
question was,
That's a project line. That's actually a sheet line. This is actually a plan set sheet line.
okay,
So here's the indicator over here.
Yeah.
So this is actually the property line.
okay,
So this is on 1420, and this is on 1520.
okay. So the project is going to be permitted for what is in this,
Both
correct?
projects, both projects, yes. All, anything that's encompassed by these two, these dashed areas,
These dark
yes,
lines?
yes.
All right, that's my question. So how far is it from here to the end of the project? I realize the property owner owns the property. My only question is, how close is this to the edge of the project? Because the only thing we're permitting is the project area.
Yeah, I don't think it's very much past that stockpile area, right?
Right, and, again, though, the heavy dashed line here really just shows you how the project is broken up into pieces for the plan set.
Okay,
So it's not really in that project boundary.
so this really isn't here, so to
Exactly,
speak.
that's right, it's only
Okay.
meaning is for index.
Okay, okay.
I have a question regarding the stockpile. I'm presuming that stockpile from Mr. Bujo's gonna retain ownership of the land, the topsoil?
Question?
It's an important question because if the soil is gonna leave the site, that requires a permit from the soil conservation board. That's very important, you gotta leave the site.
That becomes mining activity.
Yeah, no, you're right, you're right. I suspect it's true, it is. Verify that.
Please do.
Does anyone else have questions? Anything, where are you as far as the Conservation Commission goes? As far as meeting with them and getting approval and what else?
Sure, yeah, we attended the meeting last Thursday. Had a productive meeting, we determined that with the changes that occurred to the project, we'll be amending the order of conditions, so we'll go through the amendment process hopefully in the next 2 to 3 weeks.
Okay.
So we're out to public notice at this point, notifying the hearing on the 29th. So there should be a public hearing on the 29th
Of July?
of July.
Where is that hearing gonna be held?
Here.
This building, this room? What time?
7 p.m.
Marissa Polcastro is joining us.
Okay, so you're gonna be making revisions to meet some requirements from Concom, and you're gonna be meeting with them, and there's a public hearing coming up, correct?
Well, the only thing is, we've made the revisions, so all the revisions are reflected in the plans you have now.
Okay.
Concom has seen them. As well.
Yeah, but we haven't opened it, we had to have an actual public hearing for
Correct.
the open meeting, so that's why we requested them to come back and legally notify the abutters and put it in the newspaper, so. The
Okay,
commission didn't act on anything at the last.
Okay, so have those notifications been done? Has it been in the paper?
Or we notified the abutters,
And has it been in the paper?
yes, well, it should be in as of, yesterday, according to Charlie, I need to check in with him.
Okay. Okay. Does anybody have any questions or comments?
Not about the plans, no.
Okay, anything else?
I do.
Okay, Mr. Aguirre.
Sure. So Dave, I need clarification on the numbers you sent over to us in an email, Tuesday. So, do you need a copy? You have one here?
Yeah, I got it.
Okay. So, on what you sent over to us, you have the total DC kilowatts as 4,410, which obviously is 4.41 megawatts. However, in the original submittals, the DC array size was 4,578, which is a difference of almost 5%. So in order for us to quantify, well, first, I can't give it a project number until I have accurate numbers, which is why I haven't assigned them yet. And then secondly, in order for us to quantify the permit fee, both for building and stormwater, we need to know what the numbers are. So is there a discrepancy, or you guys?
Well, let me just also throw in the acres of disturbance, you
Right.
originally said it was 25 acres, now you're saying it's 21.5 acres, so what's going on?
All right, we'll get to that second. First one, I think you're looking at the plans that was submitted 4 years ago.
No. I'm looking forward to you starting to us. These were dropped off at my office in September.
Yeah, sure, okay. So that
Is this the same set?
what's that full set, Chris?
This is not a full set. This is what was given to me with the permit application.
For the building.
Right.
Right, that's
You see the
before,
date and.
that was before everybody started meeting with this board and making changes.
So then we have that revision, so this is. Right.
So the project has been small?
Yeah, partly because when they expanded the basin down here, they had to move some panels.
Okay.
And then when we got here, they had to take some out. And through signal sort of optimizing the layout, they were able to shrink some away, push the tree line in over here, and eliminated the crossing that was over here, so that lends as to why the area of disturbance is small.
So Todd, do you have a full size plan set that reflects that?
Again, that's the one I showed you, I got 3 of them.
Okay, so that's the one you want me to use to verify that this is accurate.
Yes.
All right, very good, all right. Okay, thanks. No, that's okay.
So that being said, without accurate numbers on the megawatts, Jim can't issue a project number. Once Jim issues a project number, then we can work on a stormwater permit. Our stormwater permit is based, the fee has to be split, it's based on the acres of disturbance, and it has to be split because they're not equal here between 1420 and 1522. And so that's what we, so we've got draft conditions, which you all have a set of. That we come up with, we just don't have any numbers on them yet, because we were waiting on accurate numbers on the other side.
So, I just wanna, just real quick, as far as the megawatt numbers, I checked again with, designs over at Signal Energy yesterday, and the numbers that we have given as far as the megawatts on each parcel, I had them recheck those to make sure those are accurate, and as of today, those are the accurate numbers.
It's here in David's.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
So did I understand you mentioned DC, what is AC? What's the AC out there?
Well, when on a solar array, they collect the power, it outputs it as DC of direct current.
I know that,
Right.
it gets converted, the end product that
It's
you are
AC.
selling is AC.
Yes.
So, since your proponents have requested pilot agreements, and pilot agreements are based on the building permit and every other permit that we have to get involved with, it also has to state the AC, that's the product you're selling.
Okay.
Okay.
The megawatts they gave you did not say.
No, it was just a DC.
We just went through this with another company who happened to be out of the States as far as the ownership goes. And there was their discussion about DC, and our position is the end product, what you're selling. I was gonna say manufacturing, but what you're selling, in fact, is AC, and that's what we base everything on. So the pilot agreements contain both DC and then the AC number. So that's one thing he should have, because he's gonna give me information of those pilot agreements.
Okay.
So guys, we still have an issue. So this plan set doesn't include a new electrical plan set. So are you telling me those haven't made it my way yet? Because in the absence of one, I have to use what you submitted to me, which is what I showed you.
Okay.
This that Todd said he just received doesn't have what I need to do my building permit. So am I guessing that'll be forthcoming?
Yeah, I mean, we're the civil engineer for the project, so we don't get involved in the project.
Right, okay. So, but I'm telling you now that what you gave us, which is what we requested, does not match what I have in my possession for building permit. So you won't get a permit until I have everything matches, okay?
Okay.
And just to be clear, you weren't sure we'd be doing a building permit today?
No, that's fine, but that's next.
Oh, that's next, yeah, here we
So,
go.
okay.
And stormwater is going to be in that mix too. So, again, what Mr. Quinn and Mr. Aguirre will be working on, that's all gonna match. Not to raise, irritating subjects, is there a SWIP already on this, or is it in the process, where is it?
There is a SWIP,
Haven't looked at it since December, I don't think.
okay, I can get you,
No, I'm saying, I think we had it from December, but it may need to be tweaked based on some of these changes that have been made.
yeah, no, you're right, so yeah, I can get you an updated SWIP.
We usually make that a condition of, for the pre-construction meeting, that they would have to have that document.
As I said-
We've seen a draft that's in pretty good shape.
As I said, not to bring up aggravating issues, but again, as I say, we have a number of solar farms. I just won't get the aggravating stuff up there first.
No, that's fine, because some of the issues we brought up today, as far as the entrance is concerned, those would have to be, that piece of the SWIP would have to be modified, whether or not we're talking about, requiring continued street sweeping out front or anything like that, so yeah, that's fine.
Does anybody have anything else?
Let's say you get the draft conditions in front of you, which we had talked about at the last meeting, briefly. So Roz and I put them on paper, and we can talk about them some more.
Go ahead.
I mean, the stormwater maintenance bond, that's number 9, it's in red. That's generally dependent on the amount of structures and stuff that's on the site to deal with. Remember, this is 2 separate pieces of property. So there's one detention basin on each property right now?
The northern piece has 2.
Oh, right, the
Two
whole
new
one,
ones.
okay. But the other piece on the left has basically the entrance road and going through the vernal pool area there and all that, so it would probably be easier to make them both about the same amount for the bond. I can't see just doing one, $1,000 different than the other one, but and we gotta come up with an amount there. Number 12 is a new one, after we went to the last solar facility and saw the 500 gallon tank of fuel sitting on the site there. That was something we don't wanna have, if they wanna have it, they need to have a permit from the fire department and have it in, on speed or whatever to make sure it doesn't leak anywhere, but. And then obviously number 11 is a kind of a new one too that we come up with.
Oh, Mrs. Grassi, would you make sure that the police chief gets this form and tell him to look at number 11? Because it's a requirement. Oh, because we'll be going into that meeting, so if you could get that to him. Oh, please.
I just have a quick question on the conditions. Since we know that we're gonna be doing, or have to do additional soil testing on site, especially for those northern, shallow basins to verify the soils, should we have a condition in there to verify exactly where you want that done in the sequence of events?
Number 6.
Sorry.
So basically what you guys had suggested was after the tree cutting, while they're in this stumping and the excavators are there, would be the time to dig the holes.
Yeah.
And if anything has to change, you can't go any further until the redesign is submitted and approved and reviewed and everything else, so.
Relative to number 11, I would suggest that in anticipation of your needs when deliveries, well, not only deliveries, when the first heavy equipment's going to come, and heavy equipment, whether it's, I assume it's gonna be in some form of flatbed with excavators, so forth on it. Before that even happens, I would suggest you put together some kind of a draft, I'll call it a staging schedule, and that you run that by the chief of police ahead of time. One of the things we have run into is that sometimes project managers on site do not necessarily think we need a detail here or we need a detail there, even though they were told ahead of time we will have. And since that's a very heavily traveled road, William Street, and obviously it's very easy to observe what's going on relative to entering and exiting that property. We prefer not to issue stop work orders. The other thing too is if you have a draft, at least for the first heavy equipment, and then maybe the next one is, the first heavy schedule is gonna talk about the equipment that's coming in to clear the land and to remove debris, stumps, wood, whatever you're gonna haul out of there. And once they're all done and excavation of the land is taking place, and for example, if the legs, those aluminum things that hold the panels are starting to arrive, there should be a second, if you will, draft schedule, so that as needed, the chief will know ahead of time or his designee. There's an officer that actually schedules details, but they will have it, and you would call ahead of time and say, okay, we want to reference this. In the draft, we said this. Looks like the date's going to be this, and we're going to need a detail for 4 hours or for 8 hours, whatever. But at least it'll show that there is a draft plan in place. Again, we prefer not to have stop work orders issued, but I would just say, based on experience, rest assured it will happen if it needs to, so.
Sure, that's a good idea. So provide a draft of what we anticipate ahead of time and outlining all the steps. And then as the dates approach,
Confirm,
dates approach.
yes, confirm. And the other thing too is we have a number of utility projects going on in town, and periodically we have tree companies showing up to trim whatever. And so there's a lot of details scheduled, and then of course there's the unexpected water main break, at least on my street. And we have to have, depending upon the nature, we have to have so, and there is some paving going on, here and there on state highways, so that, anything you could do in advance would be good, as long as it's not draft, and the scheduling officer, or the chief will know, we will call and confirm.
And then would the chief be the point of contact for that? For one, to go directly to the chief?
I would make sure the chief gets a copy of the draft and ask him to give a copy to the scheduling officer, and he will tell you whether or not, my guess is he's gonna give you the name and phone number, direct phone number for the scheduling officer.
By agreement with the chief.
Yeah, but I would start with the chief.
Again, just a reminder, no deliveries before 7 AM. You know, we asked if there's any type of construction porta johns on site, same situation, they have them not emptied out prior to 7 AM. Some of the things we've asked before, it's, you know, it's been an issue recently, so we just want to take care of that issue before it does become one.
The most recent land disturbance relative to a solar farm that we're dealing with, we gave them specific hours. I believe it's 7 AM to 7 PM on weekdays, 7 AM to 4 PM on, was it 8 to 4 on Saturdays? I'll have to look that up. No work on Sundays, so forth and so on. All parking, I would assume, is going to be somewhere behind the actual Arujo business. There's not gonna be any parking on William Street or in the parking lot areas that are reserved for customers. Because I think that access road that goes up to the site, you're going to be building a parking area for workers. So I would think that's one of the first things that's going to happen, because there is some land that's relatively open that can occur on.
So you want that as a condition of no on-street parking?
Absolutely. You know, on a busy weekend at Arujo's, never mind events, parking is tough, it's full.
No, I just wanted, I don't know if you wanted to add it in as a condition
I
of
think
the.
it's a good idea. No on-street parking, and and quite frankly, no use of, customer parking at the business. Because that's the other thing, we don't want people coming and going as customers, getting mixed up with people who might be coming in to do something and leaving and, you know,
They should have plenty of room on the site.
I think so.
Yeah,
Because we went up there, you know,
I didn't mark anything with the customer.
yeah,
And once it's clear to have the construction of the room inside too, probably a lot of work.
one of the areas we're working on with an active land disturbance, we had to restrict parking to the north side of the road, simply because it's a ditch on the left side, on the south side, and also the curvature of the road and private property and everything else that was there. So that worked out okay, and they were quick to build employee parking on site. So that worked out okay.
So I would suggest for number 9, the bond amount, make about $10,000 per lot.
How many basins are we gonna have?
There's 2 on the north property, the south property is 1, but the south property also has the access road through the vegetated wetlands, and it's got that crushed stone part, and then we come down to the entrance here, and we got that water dam and
The
all that.
fire chief wants the vegetation maintained on each, 2 foot, I believe it's 2 foot.
So 2 foot on either side.
And that was extended, it's almost 400 feet long now.
Did the plan show that?
Yes.
Okay.
They do now.
So has the chief seen, well, there's gonna be another set of changes or something, so we wanna make sure that the fire chief lets us know everything's okay with him.
He's been in the mix on all this, he's in the,
Okay,
he's
so
in the
he'll
green mix.
continue until, he'll let you know, so we know, or whoever, okay? These bonds under 9, this is separate and distinct from the decommissioning bond, which will be covered in the, building permit that Mr. Aguirre handles. And as long as they're maintained, the funds won't be used, obviously, and when the project is over or whatever, it shuts down and the land is, it has to be returned to as close to normal as possible. Obviously, the bonds would be, would not be used, but,
Yeah. It's understood.
is there anything else today? Okay, so looking to continue this. Because we're waiting for changes, additional plans, and you're waiting for info.
Now that I've had clarification that these numbers are accurate, I'll assign project numbers and get that over to the stormwater agent. And then we'll be able to work on the actual stormwater permit once I have the project numbers issued.
Lisa, what day is it gonna come? And then there's a 20-day appeal period. So if we met on the 18th, there's no appeal period to our permit, so technically the 18th would probably be the end of that conservation. Appeal period might actually work out for this.
Is that on all what we need to do?
It will be with this schedule. Okay, so I'd like to take a motion to continue this hearing to August the 18th.
So moved, Madam Chair.
So the discussion was that the conservation meeting on the 29th, if they issue, then you get a 20-day appeal period, and that falls within that, so it would be right at the end of that, so there's no appeal period on ours, so you could meet it.
Okay, all right, just one question, I guess, along the lines of that. Want to make sure we're clear on what's expected on that next set of plans. So far, I think we're expecting, and this maybe speaks to whether it needs to be continued, I'm not
Okay,
sure.
excuse me, before you go any further, there's a motion on the floor to continue the hearing. Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion.
Right, so we just want to be clear that there's something material that we changed in the plans that warrants a continuance, or if that's the most appropriate step at this point.
My personal opinion is regardless of that, I want to hear from the police chief.
Well, this board has to vote to approve with the conditions, with the permit, and haven't finished it yet, so.
The way it all sounds, I can't speak for everybody, but you'll have a permit at the next meeting.
Yeah, that's.
Unless something drastic happens with conservation, so.
Right, because if we close it today and conservation says move the road 1 foot to the right, we gotta start all this all over again. So it'd just be easier on the 29th if they say move the road 1 foot to the right, we can deal with it by the next meeting.
Madam Chair, I'd like to request of the applicant that any final plan revisions be also submitted to our office manager, Gator, every Easter day, every invoices, if you would. So that we're gonna have it on record.
Thank you.
I'll clarify, we'll get a stormwater permit, then you can deal with the building.
Is there any further discussion on continuing this? Hearing none, I'll call the vote. Mr. Tilling.
Aye.
Mr. Aguirre. Aye. Mr. Ryan.
Aye.
Mr. Ferry.
Aye.
Mr. Burnett. Aye. Nancy Gulart, aye. So we will see you on August 18th, and that will be at 1:30.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks for that, Ron.
Nancy, I told you before, don't worry
All right.
Madam Chair, just to let you know, there are in the crowd is Duarte, which is 5L on the agenda, and online we have.
I'll make the motion to take 5 out of water.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to take agenda item 5L out of order. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the vote. Mr. Pius.
Aye.
Mr. Tilling.
Aye.
Mr. Aguirre.
Aye.
Mr. Ryan.
Aye.
Mr. Ferry.
Aye.
Mr. Burnett. The motion is to take agenda item 5L, Paul Duart property on Hart Street out of order.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, I am Nancy Goulart, I vote unanimous. Okay, so this is on the agenda because, during the storm, I received a report about, runoff with silt, and there were pictures sent to me. And as a result of that, it's on for discussion because of the amount of runoff and silt and lack of controls in place, to prevent this from happening. This has been on the agenda before. This item is specifically about the events that happened that day and the lack of runoff control. Who wants to start on the committee?
Well, Lisa's had the most, she's not on the committee, but she's had the most contact with the DOR, so.
Okay. Lisa, were you up there at the,
I wasn't out there during the storm, I was out there after the storm chasing me around.
okay, so just describe briefly the conditions you found after the storm.
Okay, I couldn't pinpoint where the mud, the silt was coming exactly from Mr. Duarte's property. It appears to be coming somewhere in between, 578 and the neighbor to the west, which I don't know the address off the top of my head, but the owner is Camara.
And I was with Lisa when we walked some of this, and I agree with the assessment, it was hard to tell exactly where it was originating.
So I do know that Camara also has some development going on their site. They're building an in-ground pool and a garage. And I did speak with Mr. Camara as well. We want to talk about that.
We can't get into a deep discussion about him because he hasn't been notified that this was coming up today, but I will ask this question. Has there been any conversation with that property owner relative to control of runoff?
Yes.
Okay.
For the record, it's 586 is the abutter to the west.
All right, so tell me what you saw. You said you were chasing muddy water, so tell me what you saw.
I inspected the erosion controls around the perimeter, and I
Of
did,
whose property?
of 570, Mr. and Mrs. Duarte, 578.
Okay.
I was out there, the water was still flowing in the ditch. So the silt that we observed was in the ditch. So the silt was there was definitely silt in the ditch. However, pinpointing it, whether it came from 578 or 586 is rather difficult. It's entering a ditch that's dirt. So it's dirt running into dirt.
Now, just for the record, I started here almost 4 years ago, and this project's been going on for all those 4 years and before that. But early on, years ago, I don't remember when this first kind of came up, there was no stormwater permit for the project. But I spoke with Mr. Duarte at the time, it was the driveway, there were no check dams, et cetera. He's been responsive all along to doing actions to try and remedy the problem. The problem we got is this house has been taking far too long to build. I'm sure the wife will weigh in on that and agree with that, but it's been taking far too long. Normally, this type of construction would have been over and done with in 1 year, and we would only have a small season of this being an issue. But this has been like continuing. So, but he has been putting in erosion controls left and right every time we've asked. There've been additional ones. But the biggest issue is getting loam and seed down and grass growing. And once grass is growing, it's going to be clean water running, and nobody's going to complain about clean water. But right now, it's bare dirt, and bare dirt leads to mud, which then leads to it going downstream and us having issues. So, but the Duartes have been very receptive to both Mrs. Caledonia and myself, anything we've asked for. The question is, for this board today, is what he's doing enough, or do we need to do something? Again, we do not have a stormwater permit because this started a long time ago. It's just a single family house, so it never really took the threshold, shall we say. He is over 35,000 square feet of disturbance, but again, he's been very receptive to everything we've asked him to do, so.
Except the bylaw and the regulations have been in effect a lot longer than 4 years, and there should have been a stormwater permit issued.
There probably should have been.
And it should have come before the Board of Health at the time, because they would have been the agency that Board of Health, Board of Selectmen, we were saying at the time.
But at the time, you may not have been proposing more than 35,000 square feet of disturbance either, I don't know, you know, because
No,
obviously you're going back
and
in
I
time
don't-
and
I
ways,
don't
so.
either.
The plan that doesn't indicate there would have been that much disturbance.
Except that once you exceeded, you already kicked yourself into the bylaw compliance and regulations. Mrs. Caledonia, so you couldn't determine where water was coming from, it was only in the ditch, it wasn't running off property.
Right, so there's muddy water in the ditch, and there's definitely runoff from the site, but you couldn't pinpoint it being mud exactly until you see it in the ditch.
Okay, Mr. Ferry, did you do an inspection?
Yes, from time to time I do go up to Hart Street and run into the ditch. Similar circumstances, it's tough in front of the house, it's muddy water, but that doesn't, it's not straight from the house in that slope, it's kind of slopes from the west. It's kind of like the pressure, it lets you go either way. I mean, you can't really dictate where it's coming from. I'm looking at some of the pictures, and it's all over the town.
There's almost like a valley almost between the two properties now, there's like a low spot. And it comes out, there's briar patches, there's rose bushes, so it's coming out there. Since this storm, I have gone back, to try to determine whether or not the barriers at the lower end, I climbed through all that stuff, and those barriers, there's several layers of the barriers, which I'm sure they'll tell us about, that, there's no way, there's nothing getting through that. So I believe it's coming from somewhere north, whether it's coming from the lot to the west or the Duart's lot. I don't know.
Unless you disturb more behind the house and it's running through you, the house to the west, it's possible. Right, so that would make sense coming down that line where it comes up.
So I will also throw out there the septic system. The septic system's in the front yard. Water table in the entire site is about 2 feet below ground. So the septic system is a mound about 5 feet high. But because it's perpendicular to the slope, it gets to be about 7 feet high in the front end. So it's a lot of dirt in the front yard. It appears that they finally got it shaped right. It's been a long time. And again, it needs loam and seed over it, but
There's no grass growing on the,
there's no grass. Is there even loom spread?
There's grass growing.
In the back, not front.
In the front. There's jute messes now too, as a.
Yeah, no, I saw the mesh like yesterday, I think, but I don't remember seeing grass.
Right on top of the septic system, there's grass.
Okay.
There's weeds and just to the left of the septic system, a little further back, is also grass and weeds.
But it's been a lot of dirt that had to be brought in from that front yard to make the septic system comply with Title V. So, but again, that's actively ongoing, it's appearing near the end, I'm assuming I'll be getting an as-built in the near future, so. At the Board of Health.
okay. Do you wish to speak?
Just be on microphones, this disc up on the front
This
desk, so
is
speak
here,
up.
so you need to speak up.
Good afternoon, thank you, board. So this is, we just got the information on having this meeting, the email was, Monday. We were not aware, so I don't know what the board is really looking for, but we weren't getting. This is the first we've heard of this, so, as far as the project, it has gone on for quite a few years. That being said, even though it's been going on for quite a few years, work on the site itself has not been continuous. The house, yes, to construct. I've been doing it nights and weekends, and that's pretty much the reason why it's taking so long. As far as site work, we actually did it in three stages. 1 year, we did the electrical service. Once that kind of ruined a little bit with the brush and stuff, we ended up doing the water service the following year. Once that was done, that's when we started the process with the septic system. Septic system has been going on, it's taken a while. We let our permit expire. We applied for the re-permit, to do a
perk testing, and so it's all stuff that's made it last longer than it really should. Throughout that time, we kept up barriers, I've maintained it, we have records of it. And, you know, we have done a lot of work there, and it's taken a while, like I said, like I mentioned, most of it has been spread out, not from day one till today that it's been working, you know, we've been working on the project as far as, I kind of have a date when I think I know when the issues really started. It was September 6th, 2019. Prior to that, there was really nothing that was of an issue that I was ever made aware of. After that date is when certain events happened. That is when things really started to, I guess, we started getting more conservation was involved. And again, this is the first thing. That's when things really started. So again, it's been a long time, but September 6th, 2019 is when the actual issues of water running off were a major concern.
So question, when do you anticipate no more raw dirt on your site and you'll have grass everywhere?
I have one small section in front of the septic system that I have to kind of level off and then throw the loom down. The left side, the right side is all set, the back, the top of it is all set. And I have one section between the house and the septic system that is bare right now, because that's where I've been using to go back and forth with the machinery. That's the reason why I haven't done anything with that. As of yesterday, looking at the septic system, to the left is all seeded, to the right is all seeded. The section in the front is what's not seeded.
What about backyard?
Backyard is, I got grass and weeds covering the whole entire thing. I actually submitted
Can
some.
I have permission to
Yes.
pass
I was
these around,
gonna
they just
say-
submitted to the conservation commission.
What are these pictures of?
These pictures are from, what, last week or last week of the site.
So while you're looking at those pictures, my first question is, I heard about electric and septic and water and all that stuff. When did you break ground for the foundation to build the house?
December, I wanna say it was September 2015.
2015, you think? Does that sound right?
Yeah, I think
December
that's not-
2015.
When you broke ground for the house, did you take steps to control runoff?
Absolutely. In fact, I was not, when I went in front of the board, one of the things that's on my plans was siltation barriers that were required. In fact, I'm not sure who it was that went there, because I wasn't there at the time. When the excavator went there, again, I'm not sure what board showed up and said, before you do anything, you need to have siltation fences. He started installing, and I told the excavator that I would do. And we had one in the front, one in the middle, like the plans, and I even put on the left side and the right side of my driveway, I had two runs going up the side, just so that nothing would come from the east side into my property and then go out the west side.
Very challenging site, I think, as far as the roadability and
Just the water table.
everything.
And one other thing, if I might, along the way, we've actually had civil and environmental consultants go out there 3 different times for, to help us with the runoff and to prevent any runoff, I should say. I have letters from him, and pictures from him also in regards to the steps that we've taken and what he recommended.
So my question is, when you broke ground for the foundation and started building the actual house, which was September 2015, and you're saying it was 2019 that concerns were raised about runoff. What have you done since 2019?
Quite a bit. That's where I ended up installing ended up having to put, the conservation actually went out there, Charlie Mello, and I believe they did this, and a couple other guys went up there, and they asked me to put culverts in my driveway to help with any runoff. Lisa wasn't part of the board at that time. Culverts in my driveway to help with anything, also some socks in an area where I had the water system piping.
Yeah, they weren't exactly culverts in your driveway, they were more like water dams.
Yes, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
you're right. Just
So
to kind of.
there was like a berm, so as the water came down, instead of continuing to go down the driveway, it, like a little dip to divert it to the right, and divert it to the right, and divert it to the right.
Is the driveway paved?
Some,
Will it be paved eventually?
eventually, yeah, eventually. I was actually told from one of the conservation board members that the driveway looks really good, that it's actually probably one of the better driveways that were installed when the houses were built. And that person that said that is actually sitting in the audience.
Because it drains. Because the water infiltrates through the stones.
Correct.
Couple things for the record, Madam Chair.
Yes, go ahead and stand, yeah.
First, building permits don't expire in Massachusetts, as long as the person shows continued service on that permit. A break-in service is issued when 6 months or longer of work stops, or cease of work within the 6-month period.
On the site of the building.
On the building.
Okay.
So, although this project has taken a bit longer than normal, I would disagree with Mr. Pilling's 1-year term, because buildings can take longer than a year. They're not in violation of anything by taking however many years it takes to build a house. The second thing is, there were no plans submitted to my office that indicated that a stormwater permit was required. Because before this body, I was the catch-all for that. So,
No, correction, before your,
the Board of Health.
it was the Board of Health,
Right.
2 of which are sitting here, and were
Right,
selectmen at the time.
but we had no agent, so that's what, it sort of came to my desk. That being said, I still till today haven't seen that more than 35,000 square feet of disturbance has happened. I trust Mr. Pilling's observance, but I haven't seen that on paper. So I don't know that that's happened. And the reason I say that is all of that property before it was developed was not forested. It was mainly open areas.
This is Pudding Stone Estates.
Yes,
Thank you.
there was no forest there. This was a pretty wide open area, at least as long as I've set eyes on it. Pasture, right. So although one might say that there was a big area disturbed, considering it was open or pasture, as was just said, someone would maybe think that a lot more than 35,000 square feet was disturbed.
Do the plans in your office show what the square footage of disturbance is?
Yeah, I don't have it offhand, but
Okay, no, I understand that.
yes, it does.
My concern is that we have another homeowner involved, it appears, who has not been part of the discussion that's taking place today. I want to make this clear, what we're talking about today is specifically runoff. It's a violation, I don't care who does it. I'm not talking about water crossing the street and going into anyone else's property. I'm not talking about contamination of ponds, lakes, vernal pools, whatever. Talking specifically about the problem emanating from 2 properties that abut one another, that it appears we haven't been able to determine where the water's coming from. Somebody, or at least 2 property owners, I believe, are in violation. So maybe somebody else should also be putting down siltation barriers, even though you've talked to them. I think a site visit's in order. I think we need to go to these properties, both of them at least, to look at it. I think we need to know if more than 35,000 square feet has been disturbed. If the plan on files indicates less than, and what we see is more than, then the stormwater permit is in order. Saying that I'm not aware I should have had it doesn't work. The bylaws precede all of this. So that's one thing. But without knowing what's going on, I don't know how this board, this committee is going to make some kind of recommendation or anything else. All I know is from what's been told, we're obviously dealing with some kind of violations relative to what's been observed. One of my concerns is, yeah, the length of the building, but you know what, I agree, you don't have to get it built in a year or 2 or 3 or whatever. However, I also think that anyone who clears a piece of property to build on it is responsible for making sure, especially under the rules and regs we have to follow, that, I don't care if it's just weeds, you gotta do something to control runoff. And again, I'm talking about runoff that was observed at this last episode. So I wanna know what the committee's thoughts are, because I think a site visit is in order on both properties, which means the other property owner is gonna have to be notified. I also have serious concerns, because my first thought was, this property is not gonna turn into another Tyvek house. At least this property is being built on. Those of you who know the property I'm referring to as the Tyvek house, that wasn't a runoff issue. That was a combination of issues. My reference to that is strictly about the number of years that, I'll say, there was inaction on the property, on the part of the people who actually own that property. But anyhow, other than a site visit, does anybody have any solution suggestion? Because the problem continues. Every time it rains, Chris? Mr. Burnett, are you speaking as a member of the commission or as a property owner?
Property owner.
So at this point, you are, in effect, stepping back from the committee and you're just speaking as a property owner.
Exactly.
Go ahead. Did you see those big pictures?
Please?
You already saw the big pictures?
Oh, yeah.
I'll give you a little background. The microphone can pick me up. I'll give you a little background on the property and what's been going on.
Mr. Brenner, if you want to.
Oh, I'm fine right here.
All right.
About 10 years ago, the 40B project was proposed to the town on that site. It failed, didn't pass. So the owner, Robert Simons and Jeff Simons, they cut the property up into 6 4 main house lots. Oh, the first lots that were built going west along Hart Street, lots 6 and 5, they were built by Jeff Simons. I guess Bob was Jeff's uncle or something or other. They were in business together, but Jeff did the construction work and Bob did the building. But Jeff built houses on lot 6, lot 5. We had some runoff problems with silt going up to my wetlands. But we worked together with it. We got it down to a minimum. We did get some infiltration on my wetlands from lots 5 and 6. But like I said, I worked together with Jeff Simons. He proposed that we, when the water got low, we would take some of the silt out with his equipment. The next year the water didn't go down. The following year he was in Miami somewhere doing it. The following year I was incapacitated. We never got it done. But he did give me a check, a couple of $1,000 from his insurance company and apologized. And then he built a house on lot 1. At the time of his building on lot 1, a person had bought lot 2 and he was building there also. At the same time, lot 1 was being constructed. I worked together with that gentleman. And, we practically, from what we learned on lots 5 and 6, we practically eliminated all the silt that ran down from 1 and 2. Which incidentally is the steepest grade, the 1 and the 2 lot. But we did really well. And then Mr. Camara brought lot 3, and that was a disaster. He just, he started this project without he didn't even have a copy of his order of conditions. He didn't know where it was, he didn't know what it was. He had to go to the town hall and get a copy after I told him that he needed to stop construction, put in some silt fences, blah, 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 things like that. Anyway, he was a problem, but every time anybody even talked to him about it, he took out his phone and called the lawyer. And the Conservation Commission got a little nervous about that, and they weren't comfortable about going out and issuing them cease and desist or enforcement orders. Matter of fact, we had to get Sumadera Station one. Because the Conservation Commission didn't think so. And then Mr. Dulac came along. Before he started this project, I gave him all my extra hay, so he could help with the erosion control. As soon as he ran out of my hay, he put up no trespassing signs on his property. He didn't want to talk to me. Every time his property silted my property, I sent him pictures. I also sent him pictures and letters from my attorney, which he got and signed for. I knew the Conservation Commission was going to have trouble determining how much silt he put in my pond. So I hired Ecosystem Solutions, and they monitored my pond.
Okay, Mr. Burnett, I've got to stop you at this point.
Sure.
We are not here to discuss what is happening on your side of the road.
Okay.
We are talking specifically about the conditions that exist now that have led to this meeting and the discussion of this topic. The main topic is there is an erosion problem on the side of the road where their home is
I
located.
can get right to that.
And there is another neighbor, it appears, who may also be contributing to the problem, who has not been notified. So you gotta stay away from the other neighbor, because this is going to have to come up again, and the other neighbor is gonna have to be notified. I don't, quite frankly, I don't see a solution to this today. If you wish to address their side of the road,
I do.
I'll let it continue, all right?
I will. The last storm was 2 weeks ago tomorrow, something like that, where the silt really came down. I've got pictures on my phone.
Yeah,
I think Tom Ferry also got some pictures of it. He was the only one working that day. It was a Friday. And I'm standing at my pond looking up towards Hart Street. You pass that around, please. This has been going on continually. When that happened, I notified Charlie, Lisa, and I think I sent you pictures also.
I know somebody sent pictures.
And nobody went up, and I told everyone that, and all the pictures I sent, I told them where the silted water was coming from. It was coming from the east side of Camara's driveway. And nobody went up Camara's driveway to look.
All right, I gotta stop you. The Camaras are not here, they have been not notified about this.
Okay.
We're gonna focus, as again, we're not gonna discuss the Camaras. It appears they may be contributing to the problem, but they haven't been notified. So now, the picture that's going around, whose property is that water running on?
Me, my property.
No, I thought that was.
Yeah, that picture was his property.
So how do we know where it came from?
That's what I'm trying to figure out.
Where's the pictures of where it came from?
I have some of my hairs.
So you have pictures of runoff, silted runoff in the ditch, which is town property. Where are the pictures of where it originated from?
I need to go up.
So we don't know where it came from.
Correct.
Lisa can help a little bit with that.
She has pictures?
No, she's been up there and she saw,
So I've seen dirt underneath those rose bushes, okay?
yeah, the silt comes from his property, goes on to Camara's.
Where's the proof of where it comes from?
So,
That's what I wanna know.
yeah, Madam Chair, I, not that we can go back and forth with this, but I personally am not inclined to issue a stormwater permit at this point in time, or ask them to file, but I think a site walk and putting it on the next agenda would be in order.
Without a sidewalk, I don't see that we can do anything. I've looked at all these pictures. I've heard testimony of people that were out during the storm. That's why it's on the agenda. I hear you talking about what I think what you were describing was property comes this way and property comes this way, and there's a boundary line, and it's like a lower area between the two. Well, my question still is, where's the water coming from that's coming down that area? Without a sidewalk, I don't think we can do anything. Mr. Ferry?
I believe we're heading in the right direction. Am I allowed to ask what direction your backyard flows and cameras?
Yes.
Which directions does your backyard flow in, maybe the west? Which directions do their backyard flow?
When the water comes down, it actually goes towards my house, and then I also have I would be to the east side of my property. Water comes towards my house, and then I also have a catch pond, it's called.
And the rest.
There, and along that boundary where my neighbors in my house, I have stone, I have layers of straw, hay, all along that, and also siltation fence.
Do both backyards still flow to Hut Street?
Some of mine goes to the east, and some of it goes to the west.
Yeah, but do they both come to Hut Street or? do they-
Yes, yes.
That entire side of the
Yeah.
street all comes toward Hart
And
Street.
then there's a stone
So the
retaining,
entire side of Hart Street all drains into Hart Street.
That brings into my property.
Madam Chair, there's a stone retaining wall along the western boundary in his house. And, before it was seeded, I definitely saw some dirt that went through that. I don't think that wall was designed properly, it was just kind of put together.
Yeah, stone, I think it's more of a boulder wall than a
Yeah.
stone wall. This isn't like one you
Yeah,
see on the edge of
boulder.
a farm field. This was like a built boulder wall with large stones as it went to retain the fill that they had to bring in for the house.
Okay,
Madam Chair, would a motion be in order?
yes,
We're gonna make a motion to table this item until a future meeting, until such time we've had a sidewalk on the properties.
there's a motion to table on the floor. Is there a second?
Second.
Is a second? I'll call the vote. Ms. Pius?
Aye.
Ms. Tilly?
Nay.
Mr. Mr. Aguirre?
Aye.
Mr. Pius? Mr. Ferry?
Aye.
And Mrs. Goulart, aye. Are there any abstentions? Well, he recused himself, he wasn't here. Mrs. Grassi, would you get in touch with the other property owners and try to come up with a date and with Mr. and Mrs. Stewart, when the Stormwater Committee can go out there and look at the property? Hopefully one or both will be present. We need permission to enter the property and look at it. And this will be, it's tabled right now, but hopefully with the site visit, we can schedule this and we'll notify you and the other property owner, to try to determine, where the problem is coming from. It may be that both property owners are gonna have to take action, period. But until we know that, we really can't do much. Mr. Billy?
Do we have permission to walk on your property so that we can, as a stormwater committee, not just the conservation agent and the health agent? Okay. Now, what if the Camaras say, no, we can't go on the property, I'm assuming we're still gonna go ahead with walking the Duart?
Well, I would think we can look at the Camaro property from the Duat property without looking at whatever.
I've been trying, I need to grow some legs.
Yeah, it's hard to see everything you're trying to see, but again, if they say no, I still wanna go ahead with walking this property, I don't wanna have to wait and,
When Pudding Stones was proposed, we went to the site. As I remember, there was, a road off of Hart Street that went in there because there were 30-some homes, I think, something like that, Tom?
It was up there, yeah.
Are the homes that we're talking about right now, to our property and Mara property, are they, direct abutters to Hart Street? Do they have frontage on Hart Street and there is no other road?
They're all farm-made, lots.
Okay, because that was the solution when they figured that putting stone wasn't gonna go anywhere.
The houses are all set back off the street by several hundred feet.
Okay, but they all have frontage on that street. Okay, all right. Okay, so prior to the stormwater committee going out, you will be notified ahead of time. Thank you for giving us permission. We will try to get permission from the other party, and then this will be coming up at a future agenda, and we'll let you know when that meeting is.
But most likely a Tuesday or Wednesday seems to work best for this group to get together, just so you know.
Like you get more than 2 days notice.
Yeah, it wouldn't be a Saturday or Sunday, I just want you to know when it would be roughly, and yeah, we'll give you plenty of notice, because we have to arrange in our schedule to post it at the town hall 48 hours prior to it happening, so yeah.
The actual stormwater committee meeting, monthly meeting, is scheduled for August the 18th. But obviously, we'd like to get the site visit in before that. Okay, but we'll keep you advised.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
Going back to the agenda items,
Well, I'd like to make a motion that we take 5G on board since the Blue Laser online.
okay. There's a motion,
So moved.
Second.
we got a motion, who's gonna second it?
Jim will say.
I second it.
We have a motion and a second, a second
Oh,
to take agenda item, 5G out of order. All those in favor, Mr. Tilly? Mr. Aguirre? Mr. Ryan? Mr. Ferry?
Aye.
Mr. Burnett?
Aye.
Mrs. Goulart? Aye. Update on Brook Street, Mr. Tilly, you wanna start?
Hold on, I just wanna make sure, Lorraine, are you there?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Is there anybody else besides, I don't know if Mike Mullen is still there?
Mike messaged me, he had to go to another meeting.
Okay, so are there any other, is there any other public, I'll put it that way, that we can see online? Okay, go ahead, Mr. Tilly.
Okay, so this is the Brook Street Solar Project. They started construction and we've had obviously some significant rain in July. And several committee members have been out there individually and witnessed some erosion, some silt that had found its way into the ditch to the east of the property. And so this board met on the site, well, I'm sorry, go back to last week, and we told them that they had to put in additional controls to prevent erosion from getting into that ditch. And this included calling their project engineer, Nick Basandola, and telling him that these measures had to be in place by yesterday. Because yesterday we were scheduled to meet with the owner on the property. When we walked the site yesterday, there was no discussion, but in my opinion, they had taken large portions of measures to make sure that the water going into that ditch was much cleaner. Obviously, they haven't had a rain event since they put them in, so we won't know how the wells are gonna work. But they've also started constructing the infiltration basins, which will intercept a lot of this water that would be running into these temporary basins. And it appears to me that everything is being done to prevent this from happening again. It also appears that there's not as much water running through the culvert, the bridge, whatever you wanna call it, as I expected there to be. I expected more washout to be coming out from under that bridge after the rock construction underneath, but it wasn't. Yeah, I guess that's my opinion, that I thought everything, and now, there's still some things that need to be corrected. For example, there's supposed to be a staging area, parking area where they're supposed to put all their equipment, and they didn't have it all in that area at the time. But we also sidetracked them by saying, you have to do this correct your detention basin now. And so that kind of threw them off their schedule, but yeah. they're going in the right direction. I think they need some nudges here and there to be going in the right direction. And obviously that's what the site visits have been from this board. And myself as a stormwater agent and Mrs. Caledonia as the conservation agent, they have now trained multiple people on how to manage stormwater on site and to do the inspections, because there's been problems with people that were trained leaving the state or not being around or whatever. And so now they have far more people trained and far more people know what to do if something happens, so that the hope is that this shouldn't happen again. And based on the efforts I've seen, I don't think it is going to happen again for the muddy water in the ditch. But those are my thoughts on that.
Okay, Mrs. Caledonia?
Yeah, I was up there on the 14th, routine inspection.
Speak up.
I was out on the 14th, last Wednesday, I believe, for a routine inspection and saw the silt. I was surprised to see that when, you know, the workers were just continuing to work. So I approached the project manager. She really wasn't sure what to do. Since then, I guess she's been trained on stormwater. I asked two of the workers to install some pieces.
Hold on 1 second. Yep, Maureen, yes?
Yes, for some reason, I lost the video. Is there something wrong with your camera? Could it be my camera? I don't, but it just went to your symbol.
Oh, yeah, the video shut off by itself. We didn't even come near the screen.
Okay, thank you.
Can you hear Mrs. Caledonia?
Yeah, it's better if I can see, because sometimes I can try and read lips or whatever, but sometimes it's difficult to hear.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So,
measures, yeah.
I don't wanna cut you short. What I wanna know is, because I'm looking at the clock and I know people have other things that they've gotta take care of before the workday ends. Are you in agreement with statements made by the stormwater agent relative to the observations yesterday when we were out there? As far as you were there, as was Mr. Pilling and Mr. Ferry, I was with you. We all know what we saw. He kind of summed that up. My questions, what I'm looking for you to respond to is, are you in agreement with his assessment of it? Do you feel progress was made? Do you feel that the crew out there understands that Dayton takes stormwater seriously, so forth, so on? So if you would address that, please.
Yes, I believe they took the appropriate measures to mitigate the situation. The fact that Nick's taking a more active role and explaining to the crew that he's available for if they have any questions, and he also did some training on stormwater control. That's very helpful, and that's reassuring. So I agree with Mr. Kelly.
Okay, Sadia, you wish to comment?
No, I have no comments. I was satisfied with what I saw.
Mr. Ferry?
The siltation measures, yes, I'm satisfied.
Okay, Mr. Ryan, you were there.
Yes, after the site visit, I'm satisfied. They have, with the criteria of what we've asked them to do, and to make their, arrangements to mitigate the problem.
Okay, and I would just state, having been out there and seeing the problem firsthand, quite frankly, I was relieved when I got to the site yesterday, because on that same day, four of us that were out there had another site visit. I thought that one was gonna be a piece of cake. And it was sort of a reversal, but I feel better now having been out there yesterday and talked to everyone who, and I'll also tell you, some of you, maybe all, not all of you, but some of you have been on emails that I've sent back and forth where I've raised issues specifically based on observations and what we have seen. And got answers. Some of the answers I brought up yesterday because they weren't acceptable, but we got beyond that. So I have nothing to add. Mr. or Mrs. Beausoleil, do you wish to speak? I'm gonna, under public input, I'm gonna limit this to 3 minutes because we are really running late and I'm counting at least 10 more items on this agenda. So go ahead.
Well, could you tell me how deep that basin is?
I believe, when it's fully constructed, I believe the inside is supposed to be about 4 feet high.
Okay, and,
That's from the ground to the top of the berm.
okay,
Now,
And
right now, they've actually dug it out because they had to remove some of that, the topsoil and the subsoil and replace it with stone so it will infiltrate into the ground better. So that's why right now, if you look at it, it looks much deeper.
okay, and what do they put on there to hold the dirt in, the soil in? Does grass grow? Does it just take its natural course and let, grass and weeds?
It will be vegetated, they are gonna loam and seed it, and then there may be some other vegetation that'll grow on the outside of it.
Yeah,
like trees and stuff like that, but the inside is going to remain grass or stone where we get the water into the ground.
okay. And when it comes time to putting in the panels, who would be responsible to make sure the panels go where they're supposed to go, according to the plans?
That's my department, that's the building department.
Okay, so you make sure that the footage from the
Yes.
property mark, according to the plans, is correct?
Correct. We also require an as-built plan to be submitted before I issue a final inspection to make sure that what the planning board approved is what they constructed.
Okay, and is that do you check by GPS or?
I don't know how they come up with it. They give it to me in a two-dimensional plan. It's stamped by a surveyor. So I guess the answer is yes. They are responsible for getting a licensed surveyor to submit an as-built plan.
Okay, and for just one other reference is, we did have the Porta-John cleaner come today at 5:30 a.m.
Oh.
So just to let you know.
Duly noted, thank you.
Okay, that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I will send an email to Mr. Thompson, who is the sort of local person. My guess is they didn't have time to catch up with whoever the service company is for the Porta-John. But I will tell him, what did we say, not before 7 a.m., is that what we told?
7 a.m.
Not before the beginning of the workday for the crew. All right, I will send an email to Mr. Thompson and ask him to confirm that this has been delivered to whoever services that site, okay?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pilling, for letting me come before, putting me ahead. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm going to return to the agenda now. 5D, request for stormwater program. As a result of the firecracker event, I was requested by a den mother from Rehoboth who has a Girl Scout troop, and asked if I would be willing to put on some kind of a age-appropriate stormwater program for her troop. And I said I would be glad to obviously part of our public education, that I need advance notice. I need to know the ages that I will be speaking to, and she said that was fine. I was also approached by Mr. John McCall, who is a member of the town city council, who asked me if I'd been willing to go on his talk program and talk about stormwater. Again, I told him, as part of the public education program, I would be willing to do it, but I really need advance notice. My understanding is a call-in and talking questions and whatever. So I just let you know, those are potential expansions of our
Going on the radio.
of our education program.
Could be next.
Got it, so any comments? If not, I'm gonna keep moving on. If anyone has comments, just say I wish to comment, because I really want to get through this, because it's almost 3:15.
Keep going, Nancy.
Okay. The next one is 5E, review the additional promotional materials. This is directly connected to both the firecracker event and to the request for programs, specifically the Girl Scouts. I'm working with Mrs. Grassi, and we have one catalog, but I'm looking for something that I can use that's age appropriate as a giveaway, because it means more, I think, when you walk away with something, especially children. The brochures we have are fine, they're at a level that a child in school could understand. But anyhow, Mrs. Grassi and I will be moving ahead with that. We're not looking to spend tons of money, but I just wanted you to know this is kind of a unique thing, because the only thing we have for children are crossword puzzles that we got off the EPA website. And they aren't really good for, if you will, early elementary, so we'll see how that goes. And we'll give you an update. Also, it looks like we're gonna have to order some more bags and grippers simply because they are so popular. And I've been giving them out for years, and people are telling me their grippers are worn out and their bags are worn out. And it tells me they're using them and we're getting the word out. So again, I'll work with Mrs. Grassi on that, and we'll have a report. We have sufficient items to give away at our next event, which I think may be the Cow Chip Festival. I'm hoping to have a table, and we have the clips, the chip bag clips, and I also have the calendars. So, which the calendars will be all gone before the end of this year, because they're the next year, so obviously. The next item is item F, update on Segregated River land disturbance in a wellhead protection zone. Mr. Pilling, would you like to give us a brief update on the technical side of Dora Estates, please?
The technical side,
The PE side.
yeah, so there were a few, we'll call them minor things. They had majorly overhauled the drainage system of the site and had removed things out of our zone 2s into zone A's and changed the type of drainage system from a dry system to a constructed wetland. They put in another underground infiltration system. It was a lot of effort went into improving the site. There were still a few minor little, we'll call them tweaks. Like, for example, one of the things they said, oh, it's woods over there, but if you go out to the site, they've removed all the trees, so they couldn't call it woods in the drainage calc, so they gotta tweak the drainage calc. The big issue that I had, there's two things. Number one is, it's going to be a private subdivision with a homeowner association, so therefore, they'll be maintaining the entire drainage system. And they're going back to the planning board for a modification because they're changing the pavement width from 30 feet to 22, which obviously means less asphalt, less runoff, so it's better. The big issue, or one of the biggest one I had, was the fact that out of the drainage basin, they have a 1-inch discharge out of it. Anything less than like 6 inches is very small coming out of a drainage basin, and they had 2 inches before, and we commented on it. Well, he changed it to a 1-inch. So, I personally do not find it standard engineering practice to put a 1-inch outlet at the bottom of a constructed stormwater wetland. But under stormwater management, it's okay. It's just, in my opinion, not good engineering, and that's why we couldn't, as a stormwater committee, push really hard on it, because if it's gonna plug up, it's gonna back up, and the homeowner association is gonna have to deal with it on a regular basis. It's just a high maintenance type thing, so. But I think they're gonna see what the city engineer had to say. Ultimately, they closed the hearing and voted to approve it contingent upon all of our issues being addressed before they can get their order conditions.
Thank you, Mr. Aguirre, you wish to comment?
No, not at this time.
It originally started out with 7 condo buildings with 3 units each. And at the very beginning, Mr. Pilling had stated, one of these has gotta go, so it's down to 6 buildings and 3 units. So that was part of this major revision. The plan that I saw with Mr. Pilling and Mr. Aguirre, and the gentleman who drew the plans, who is not a certified PE, but represents the developer, it was like looking at it was a totally new set of plans. And so that, number one, that was a relief. Number two, the other information that came out, the developer did hire I'll call her a wetland specialist, who has given us a copy of her report, which quite frankly doesn't have much substance. There was nothing new there. There was also a geologist hired by the developer, and I'm waiting for that report because I believe that one had substance. that one specifically addressed after the fact, what could have, might have, probably didn't. I mean, that's how decisive that was. The effect on the Dayton Water District wells and the water supply. Obviously, a main concern was the water supply for the Dayton Water District. Also, the pollution, contamination, soil runoff into the Segregated River because the town of Dayton has water rights to that river. In addition, I mentioned that the town of Somerset has been a party of interest in these proceedings almost since day one. And that is because I was approached by at least 2 different residents in town who, let me say, have had involvement with the river in professional, for professional reasons over a number of years. And after discussing the situation with Town Administrator Mullen, I met with appropriate officials in Somerset, and they have stayed in the loop ever since. We have received advice, we have received support. Again, they are a party of interest, as is the Dayton Water District. So we have asked for copies of the plans, once revised, once they become official, once they have a signature from a real engineer and a seal, so that we will have them on site. I believe our involvement with that project is over unless something unanticipated happens. So I want to thank everybody who has attended the meetings. Mr. Clunan from the Dayton Water District was there, and a couple members of our own staff, Stormwater Committee, and one selectman was there. And I think it was a good show of support, and I think the message was clearly delivered that when the town of Dayton has concerns about items that affect them, whether they're in town or out of town, if we have a position, it's going to be made known. So I want to thank everybody for the support and for Mr. Pilling for the quick turnaround on plan reviews that had to be done. As our stormwater agent, unfortunately, he is a real one, so that he had the expertise to be able to help us. So thank you, everybody. Any comments from anybody else?
Thank you. Good job.
Thank you. I will now move on to 5H, and this is Maris Lane, site visit. Mr. Pilling, you want to start?
Before Mr. Pilling does speak, I'd like to just mention that I did go to Maris Lane myself last week and did a quick drive-through and did a look at the housing development up there, and yes, there was quite a few problems that were up there. They had old stumps that were on silt fences were down, buried over in certain areas. Certain areas there was only 2 inches above ground. I was just alerted to the fact today that the remediation has been done up there. They've taken care of those problems, specifically on the west side of the project itself, which would be when you come in, it would be directly to your left. So I do understand they have taken care of a lot of those problems, but I was just telling you to elaborate more on that.
Alright, so go back in time a few weeks ago now, before we had like one of those bigger rain events. We had gone through and seen that a lot of their erosion controls around the perimeter were down. And I reached out to the project engineer and said, you need to get these back up, we got a significant rainstorm coming. Rainstorm came, went out, he hadn't put them up, but nothing had washed past, so everything was still on site. I called him and said, hey, we got Hurricane Elsa coming, you need to get these erosion controls up before it happens. Hurricane Elsa came, or tropical storm, whatever it was at the time, by the time it got here, and the erosion controls weren't up. Well, what happened was we did have erosion, and it came out into the street, the silt sacks were full in the catch basins, and we ended up with muddy water in the wetland to the right of the entrance. We then reached out to the engineer and said, he didn't do it, it needs to be done, we need to meet with people on site, we have to have a site meeting now. We met with them on whatever day it was last week, and we basically gave them like 24 hours to get the street swept and get the silt sacks cleaned, and 48 hours to put up erosion control. And I went by there this week, and they did everything that was asked of them in the manner, in the timeline that they said they were going to do it.
That was July 15th, Thursday.
Yeah.
Okay, and so by yesterday, everything was exactly the way it was supposed to be. And we haven't had any significant rainstorms since last Thursday, so they're on target now,
Okay,
so.
Mr. Ferry, you were at the site, and I know you followed up on it since, so just your thoughts.
Yes, he took measures, as far as I know, everything was correct, and I'm not sure about the perimeter, so facing that's not my jurisdiction anyways.
But you wanted the street swept, and you wanted the mess cleaned up that was out on Center Street.
And the riprap area to the right on your way in was gutted also and cleaned,
So it was all done?
yes.
Okay, so, obviously Maris Lane continues on, I'll call it the watch list as some other projects, but, we did get, immediate results. I was describing as that, it went a lot better than I had expected. I thought we were going to have some really difficult situation here. Does anyone else wish to comment?
I just want to ask Mr. Ryan the question that you just recently, do you know if they physically took the wood waste out or they buried it?
That I did not see, I have not made a return trip back there since the remediation has been taken care of.
They found wood waste that was previously buried on the site, which I think you might be aware of. That has been removed. I have no problem with this contractor as a whole from a building perspective. And when they have found something on the site, they have removed it.
Good.
So, one more thing, if you get any pushback in the future, just let me know. I like to shut off their inspections. So, I don't think it'll come to that, but if it ever did, just let me know.
Okay, and what we're dealing with as a stormwater committee really now is the remaining houses they're building. Obviously, it probably developed down the road when we're having flooding and dirt and all that stuff. Different issue. But there's been different developers involved, and we're dealing with a new one now on whatever the remaining homes are. Okay.
Yep, exactly.
Okay, does anyone else wish to comment? Hearing none, we'll move to 5I. Anything on Beach Street? Is the septic going in, or is anything happening?
As I said at the last meeting, the perks were done back in the beginning of June. We are still, as of today, waiting for a design plan to come into this office.
Okay, so Mrs. Grassi, this will be on the agenda for the next meeting, just for an update. Anything on 0 Horton Street? Has anybody heard anything?
Yeah, I do know, alternatives analysis was submitted by, Green Seal on behalf of the applicant, to DEP. I do know that.
Alternative analysis regarding the river stream, whatever that is?
Regarding the avoidance of the resources.
Okay. Okay, so this one will also be on a future agenda for an update. The solar on Elm Street, is this phase 2? Because I think phase 1, is phase 1 all set to the best of our knowledge?
Oh, yes.
Yes, it is.
What about phase 2?
This is still on here because the fire chief and I were supposed to get out there, and we haven't.
Yeah, now I think at this point, stormwater's gotta get out there.
Yeah, so it'll be the trio, it'll be the chief and I, Lisa
like
wants to
to
come.
Well, we had said there would be a final site visit
Right,
when we looked at 2.
yeah, we'd like to do a preliminary, just in case there is anything, and
Okay.
then we can bring back to the committee and send them a,
Okay.
a letter stating what needs to be done.
Okay, so this
We'll
will
make
be,
sure that's done before the next meeting.
okay, so, Mrs. Grassi, this will be on the agenda hopefully for the last time.
Yep.
And when you hear back from the, I'll call it the inspection trio that's going out, we will be in touch with them hopefully to set up a site visit, and it'll be the end. Have they looked into that to National Grid?
No, they will be soon, though.
Okay, but it's all built, right?
Right.
Okay, thank you. Next I'm gonna do 5M, Forest Hills Housing. All I know about this is that the Taunton Concom, again, continued a hearing relative to some kind of a drainage basin facility, something or other, that's going to be located in Taunton to drain water from the project that's going to be built in the town of Dayton. I hope to go to that hearing if they ever have it. If it's going before the Taunton Planning Board, I would like to go to that. I wonder who the players are. I'm confused. I don't know how you can approve the end result of a drainage project in one community when the community where the problem originates hasn't done anything or even been contacted. Hopefully I'm gonna find out that answer. There is going to be a public hearing on Forest Hills. Do you know the date of that?
We, the planning board itself, had a public hearing scheduled for tonight. It's been continued. They've asked for a continuance in regards to the matter in front of the Taunton Concom. That matter is continued to their Conservation Commission for August 18th.
Oh, that's the date of.
How many lots are in Dayton? How many lots are in Dayton?
All of them.
135, and there's potential for 25, I believe, in time.
Yes.
Hi, I know, I do have some information, the conservation agent in Taunton had contacted me last month, saying that, you know, we're reviewing the same project, and I said, well, we're gonna hire a peer review. And she said, I'm gonna talk to the board about us hiring peer review. Maybe it makes sense to share that same peer review company. And it does because it's the same stormwater system. So I've reached out to 2 peer review companies, and at our next Conservation Commission meeting on the 29th, we'll be making a decision on which company. The conservation agent, Michelle Espino in Taunton, basically said whatever we decide is fine with them. We can pick the peer review company. So
Is the Concom gonna pick the peer review company specifically?
Dayton Concom?
yeah, and that's gonna be for stormwater and wetlands compliance. Yeah.
Okay, all right. And as I said, if I hear there are meetings in Taunton, whoever it is, I'm gonna go out of curiosity. If, at the present time, the answers that were given were that all the homes would be in Dayton. There have been rumors about homes in Taunton, because the question I had to Mr. Ferry was, how are you gonna get to them? Not you, how do they get plowed out? Is it gonna be a homeowners association? Because certainly, if they build homes in Taunton and you can't get to them from Taunton, they gotta come to Dayton,
Or they need an intermunicipal agreement.
or whatever. But anyhow, those are all things that are up in the air with, that could, I should say, continue to be up in the air with Forest Hills. I will now move on to 5N, Hunter's Hill. Where is that one? Does anybody know?
Okay, I will tell you that Conservation back in June picked peer review company, Ecosystem Solutions and Niche Engineering to review the stormwater and wetlands compliance. And I guess most of the delineation review was complete. They have since sent us a progress print of the wetlands, because the wetlands have definitely changed on the site. I've spoken with a peer review consultant and said, look, this is not gonna be designed by conservation, so maybe we should table this for a few months and let them figure it out. Because right now, the whole plan they have before us is probably drastically gonna change. So this past month, they didn't show up, and they didn't even request a continuance. However, we gave them a continuance. So that's where things are at right now.
The developer got a continuance. Have you said yet?
The talks between the prospective buyer and seller are breaking down. So I don't think this is gonna materialize, unfortunately. I don't think this project is gonna move forward. The buyer is losing interest.
Really?
Yes. That's what I've been told.
And who is the buyer? Is it Long Built or?
Yes, Longville.
I will state for the record, the Conservation Commission was amenable and did choose the consultant that Longbuilt was requesting we choose. For what they said they didn't want Beta to review, they thought they were too overpriced. So we listened to them and we chose the consultant they wanted, which was niche and ecosystems.
I think there's more reasons behind what I just said. It's not Concom, so.
Well, my question was going to be, since when does anyone allow a developer to pick who's doing the review? Because my impression was, when you call it a temper tantrum or something else, when a developer, proposer, whatever, says, I don't want that one for whatever reason, and I don't believe it was financial. And Concom says, well, who do you want? And whoever the committee is, whoever you want, okay, we have, my position on something like that is that I guess we gotta go out and get some more. But I would hope in the future that no board in this town, for other than a really, really, really good reason, does not act independently and pick who's gonna do a review. If somebody says a certain engineering firm, whatever you wanna call it, is, I don't want them, why? Well, if you're gonna say they're incompetent, they're this, they're that, I don't like dealing with them, those aren't reasons. I only state specifically, as appointed or elected officials in this town, you have a duty to do, and you should do it to the best of your ability. And I find it difficult to think that there were only 2 proposals, and that one was totally unacceptable for whatever reason, and that a decision was made based on the feelings of the proponent. As I said, I would have handled it differently and said, guess we gotta go get some more, so we'll have to defer acting on this. That's just personal opinion, but I gotta tell you, I don't know if you'll ever run into that situation, but I'm just telling you up front how I would deal with it, period.
Well, just for the record, my personal opinion is someone who's been on the other side, doing a design and then having a review engineer charge 3 times what it cost you to do the design when all they're doing is reviewing the work, it's really aggravating. And so I can understand if they felt that the price of the review was going to be excessive, exorbitant, whatever, and ask for another review, but right, the commission should have been the one to say, here's our choice.
That's my solution, you either go with it, go get more. If you only
Not
have-
necessarily the one you point to, but we can go find them, so, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. If you check into it and you find out the only, looks like we're stuck with candidate B, so then you go with it, but you know what? Again, that's a decision of the board that has to make it. It's not because of strictly, there's only 2 and I object to that one, and you know, I'll take my bat and glove and go home, whatever the circumstances were. I'm just talking about how a committee should control those kinds of situations. I'll leave it at that.
Is that a form of a motion?
No, that's just. No, you know, hey, it was public input in less than 3 minutes. I'm just making it clear.
Rules.
Update on status of subdivision stormwater. I don't think we've had a chance to work on this.
I was going now,
He did,
and
he
I was
said,
coaxed to not to because I was O on the list.
I would recommend we table this to the next meeting.
I was going out this week to do
I'll make
it,
that motion, I guess.
and I was
He did.
likely asked not to, because we had enough going on.
Okay, so we have a motion to put this off to the next meeting. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Motion to table, actually. Mr. Pius.
Aye.
Mr. Kelly.
Aye.
That sounded reluctant.
She was asking if I was on the meeting.
Don't ask him stuff. Mr. Aguirre.
Aye.
Mr. Rhines.
Aye.
Mr. Ferry.
Aye.
Matt. Ms. Fuller, all aye. Do we have any correspondence? Mr. Burnett?
Aye.
We're all set.
Can I just ask him a personal question?
Well, Monty's
What
gonna be
happens, what
back.
happens to Hunter's Hill if this guy backs away and goes and moves to Florida? What happens to all that property?
What happens to it?
Yeah.
Well, they're not building any more houses.
Stays the way it was.
It becomes pasture.
No, it wasn't. You gotta be careful of pasture.
Obviously.
You're making a frisbee golf course instead of a real golf course.
I think it should be a big bocce court myself,
Okay.
just very easy for
Hopefully they'll spare it.
Mrs. Grassi, is there any correspondence or anything? No. Thank you. Is there any public input? Do we have any public? Does anybody here wish to speak?
I would, I just have a question, this was a comment, in an earlier, agenda item that we acted on County Street. Excuse me, Mr. Finette had mentioned something about some drainage that goes off of High Street that goes into where the old railroad bed is. Do we know if that pipe is working properly down there, or?
The pipes.
Pipe's fine. I was just curious if it was, if it was getting walking back
It runs
up.
pretty much from where the filled material and the track is.
Yeah.
It's a little seepage, but as it heads in the southerly direction, it increases somewhat. And it goes under the Hot Street and down, I don't know, it doesn't go down. It doesn't cross Hot. It goes into the stone brick in the catch basin and into the river.
Mr. Ferry, you were not present when this was discussed, and there was a question about that property that has been filled and whether or not there is drainage from County Street, if you know that, from, Mass DOT, and then also what Mr. Finette's describing was what he remembered from Hot Street. So do you have any comments on that?
Yes, our drainage utilizes the trunk line from the state, Mass DOT's drainage. It beelines it right down by that house that's out in the pier, comes out just to the north of it, under. You can definitely see a little tide of flow in sediment. That ditch in question that Mr. Ryan's brought up was recently refurbished with mosquito control to encourage the water to go there, being careful not to drain the wetlands from what it is.
So there is a wetland there.
They responded to a resident on Pleasant Street. The house right between, what used to be Benby's and, the other,
Dave Neely?
the tall guy, very tall guy.
Yeah,
Dave Neely?
Yeah, yes.
The house that sits way, way back?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, they were getting some water issues, and Mr. Neely intimately does, but that's a natural spring, he can tell you the history of that flow of water. And by Mr. Neely's house, I have another cross culvert pipe.
What's that street?
Pleasant.
So
Yeah, the address.
I can look it up. No, they shut it
So
off.
that drainage, Mr. Ferry, drainage from this property at 2371 naturally would find its way towards what you're describing?
Both High Street and Pleasant Street, yes.
And County Street?
No, from County.
All right, but so does county drainage run south to Hot and then turn the corner and go down?
Yes, and it also goes through Alice's property as on top of the surface, the end is.
Okay, all right.
And it goes to that ditch in question first.
I actually think the wetland was created when they started to fill the railroad bed in.
Exactly, right.
That's what they did.
I walked it as a kid. That's what I think.
That's exactly what happened.
Absolutely, no doubt in my mind. I walked it as a child.
Because it's always
Free and clear all the way down.
Yeah.
We used to walk all the way through, all the way to Somerset, right to the bridge, it's, where the old pier is.
The only place there's railroad flat is out west. There's no flat railroads in New England. So the water all ran.
Right, I believe the whole railroad bed, the whole bed has at least one drainage ditch on one side. Most places it's a drainage ditch on both.
Yeah, the neighbors created the wetland.
The water flows year round into my storm drain.
Right.
Okay, so, is there any other public input? Does anyone wants to raise the issues? Okay, Mrs. Grassi, what minutes can we approve? Because I don't think I've read all of these. March 9th, I think is okay.
Yep, March 9th, April 22nd and April 27th went out to the committee, you approved them, and then they went out to the committee. The 26th just went to you last week, and June 24th just went to you this morning.
Okay,
So the three,
so, has anybody had a chance to look at May 26th? Are you willing to act on these?
so May 26th, no, they haven't got that yet.
Oh, they haven't,
No,
okay.
just the top three. Sorry.
So, but I gave you the 26th and I owe you June. You
I
said
haven't
June.
given you the 26th, yes.
I owe you May 26th, all right, okay. All right, is there a motion to approve the minutes of March 9th, April 22nd, and April 27th, please?
So moved.
Second, Madam Chair.
Motion second, any discussion? Hearing none, Mr. Pius.
Aye.
Mr. Pilling.
Aye.
Mr. Aguirre. Aye. Mr. Rhines.
Aye.
Mr. Ferry.
Aye.
Mr. Burnett.
Aye.
Nancy Goulart, aye, so we're all set. Motion to adjourn,
So moved.
second.
Second.
All in favor, Mr. Pius.
Aye.
Mr. Pilling.
Aye.
Mr. Aguirre.
Aye.
Mr. Rhines.
Aye.
Mr. Ferry. Mr. Burnett. And Mr. Goulart. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Ooh.